So welcome to the non-league football debates. I'm delighted to say that Jody Brown, Frank Wilson and Jim Cooper join us, along with special guests tonight, Gary McCann and Nick Robinson. Thank you ever so much for joining us this evening. As always, we're going to go straight in to the debate this week, and we're going to start with the FA Cup. We've just seen the draw happen. Gary, I'm going to start with you. Obviously a fantastic result for you at the weekend, and you're going to be up against Oldham in the first round proper.
Yeah, it's a nice reward for performance and win Saturday that maybe most didn't expect us to serve up. So, I mean, Oldham's a historic football league team, and it's one that we'll look forward to, and we've got it at home as well. So, for all the fans that surround Hampton that have maybe been starved a little of a home tie against a recognised football league club, we can look forward to it. So, brilliant for us, brilliant.
And we always do that thing with the first round proper draw. We try and work out where the TV ties are going to go, where the biggest ties of the round. There are quite a few, but I think, as you say, that one's it's a big one. Yeah,
I think we're all in agreement that we've got a chance. I think you look at the type of tie it is. They look for an upset, don't they, somewhere along the line. The FA Cup is geared around upsets, and I mean they sit in a position in the league that they're maybe not doing as well as they would maybe like, and it's definitely got a chance, and that's all we can have at the moment is a chance. I'm sure there'll be plenty of sides that are looking for the TV game, but let's hope it's us.
And Jody, you did it last year. You didn't get the live TV game, but you were involved in it. What's it like to be involved in it?
Yeah, it's life-changing for most of the players to have the opportunity to go up against full-time players. I think what fortunate for Gary and Hampton is getting the home tie. Very good chance of being on the TV if you're the lower side and you get the home tie, and a very winnable game. We had the trip down to Exeter, which was brilliant. We made a whole weekend of it, but I would have preferred a home tie.
And Nick, obviously running the league, it's a proud moment when you get clubs like Haybridge and also this year like Haringey and Met Police make it into the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. And Leatherhead have got a chance as well. A replay against Hitchin on Wednesday. They both got home draws. If Leatherhead get through, they've got a home draw in the next round. What that does for us is help us with sponsors. Our sponsor particularly wants publicity. It wants the name going over. So if we can get both clubs in the first round proper, it does us wonders. It really does.
And Jim, you know one of the clubs very well that have made it into the first round. They'll be particularly proud of their achievements.
Yeah, it's a fantastic result Saturday, beating Havant at home 1-0, and I think they'll be a little bit disappointed. I think with the draw, they've got a home tie, but I'm not too sure how many fans will travel down from Newport for that one. But it's a winnable game, as Jody said. They're at home, they've got nothing to lose, and the excitement watching it next door and seeing young Gary's face when the draw came out was priceless for me. So yeah, it was good.
Frank, what makes a good? What's the ingredients to make a good FA Cup run, a good side?
I think with cup competitions, Ben, it's team spirit. I think is largely contributory to that. I think that if you've got a real good togetherness in your team, obviously playing teams from tiers higher than you, I think that one good recipe for success is if you've got that organisation and good togetherness about you. As we've alluded to, anything can happen on the day, really. So it's all about sort of everybody working hard for each other and trying to do the best. And I think that we've all seen many times before that teams from lower down the pyramids beat teams from higher up. It happens every single year, which is why we love the FA Cup. So obviously massive good luck to Gary and the guys, and obviously all the other teams that are in the lower tiers. Be brilliant.
One of the reasons that we do this show and one of the reasons that we all get together and enjoy non-league so much is because we realise how much it means to the people involved. And tonight the draw was on terrestrial television, but do you think people really understand how big a deal it is for a club like Hampton, like Haringey and like Haybridge last year to actually make it through to the first round proper? And it's almost likened to a club reaching an FA Cup final.
Yeah, I think I've experienced that going into Hampton. I mean, I've over my playing time and managerial time, we've been relatively successful with the FA Cup, and you see it in and around the football club. The game was a big game for us. Could we get to the first round proper? Could we give the fans and the club, the people that work at the club, the kit man who's been there for a long time, you could see the joy in his face when we had progressed. Real non-league people that the FA Cup brings that. There's no other competition we play in that creates a spotlight like the FA Cup does. We're talking about TV and TV games. There's not many other opportunities in your season outside of the FA Cup that gives you that option. So it's huge. It's not huge just for the change room. It's huge for the football club. It's huge for the town. I mean, it's going to generate a whole lot of interest in in the surrounding areas, and hopefully we'll be able to get a few more through the gate on the back of it as well. So on all fronts, it's an important achievement for us, and it's one that we're going to embrace.
Is it? I guess this is an effect of this will be that if you're chosen for TV, but if you do get through and you are chosen for TV, and is it life changing for a club? Can it have that much of an impact? Should that happen?
Sure. Financially, it is so rewarding from just that point of view, just from the money you get from the TV, but long term as well, as Nick was saying, the exposure to the club, the league that they're playing in, is almost priceless, really. I mean, for instance, last year Jody's run for Heybridge Swifts literally put Heybridge Swifts on the map, the football map, in my opinion. And I think this year that Gary's draw is for me is the draw of the round, and fingers crossed that'll be the TV game.
A couple of other draws, as you mentioned it. Haringey obviously up against AFC Wimbledon. That is an incredible draw as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant, but I think it also brings home to us the fact that clubs like Haringey who survive remarkably on fairly low crowds, getting one big match with a massive crowd creates its own problems for that club. And I think that's where they need the community to come together to help them. I've been at a meeting today where we've been talking about trying to establish a volunteer force to help clubs, particularly in a situation like that. And I think that probably you say, do people understand what it means to them? Do they understand what it means to the work that the club has to do in sorting that out? Haringey got Leyton Orient last year in the trophy, and that really brought it home to them, the work they had to do for that. So they've got some experience of it. If that's chosen as a television match, they then got the police going in, looking at all the facilities they've got and saying, well, we'll now put a capacity on. No matter what capacity the leagues have allowed them, the police will go in and say, that's it, the capacity is this amount. So there are a lot of things that come into that, and then the club have to decide, okay, we've been restricting capacity, are we going to increase the costs? Last year, Haringey, again, sorry to concentrate on them, but really good. The chairman there said, no, we're not putting our prices up. We're going to keep the prices as they are. I want to reward my supporters, those who've come all the way through with us. We're going to keep the prices the same, and I think that's great.
It's a very good point that you've made, actually, the other side to it, of all the excitement of perhaps getting that big tie and maybe being on TV, the work and the volunteers at this level of football, we've often talked about that, and the work that they put in puts a lot of pressure on them. Is there enough support in the club? Is there enough support in the league when these big draws happen?
I think it's not something the league can really help with. Obviously, if they need administrative help, we can provide that. But really, it's not for the league to do that. What we need is for the local community to come knocking on the door saying, can I help? You've got a match. What do you want me to do? Can I be a car park attendant? Can I sell programs? Can I help you? It's that sort of thing that really we want to push around and encourage people to come knocking on the door saying, can I help?
I think also within non-league, we've just touched on. I think a football club is only as well run as its volunteers available to it. I think, you know, the clubs that struggle, you know, on a match day, on a, you know, the general running of the club, mostly is because it hasn't got a band of volunteers, and volunteers being the word, not paid, but actually volunteers that are prepared to put time and effort and willing into, you know, into the running of the football club, and they're invaluable to every non-league football club, and I know at Hampton we've got a real force of them.
Did you find last year that you had to change perhaps things behind the scenes? There were more volunteers needed when the bigger games, even the travel into Exeter and everything that went with that game. Was there a struggle at the club because you weren't used to it, or was it just people just got together and made it happen?
Most of our ties were away ties, so in terms of the pressure put on the volunteers at the ground, it wasn't that demanding. The trip down to Exeter was totally different to a normal Saturday because we had 3 or 4 coach loads of supporters went down, but the club paid for them via the prize money, similarly to the Haringey chairman, to reward them for the support they'd given us. Obviously the things like booking hotels, booking somewhere to train when we were down there were all new to us and probably to most clubs at our level, but I don't think there was a significant amount of pressure put on us as a club. But certainly if you get sort of like Haringey got Leyton Orient at home, they're both in the same borough of London, I think, and to suddenly have that number of people come through the gate, it would put added pressure on you. But we didn't experience that last year. No, the biggest change for us was the media exposure. When you got like the cameras down at training, you know, the radio wanting you to go in and do interviews, the local TV wanting you to go and do interviews, that was the biggest change. But no, we just enjoyed it and embraced it, and it was an excellent experience.
How hard is it with the league programme when you get this kind of success? Is it something that you just don't think about because you take the FA Cup and the FA Trophy success, or does it have an impact at the end of the season and clubs will struggle because of it? Have we found the right balance at the moment with the fixtures?
I'm not sure if I'm the right person to ask, Ben, because of my lack of successful cut runs.
I was putting the question out there.
But in general, I would obviously say that, you know, any team that's had a... I think obviously weather is a massive part in it. You know, I think that, Jody, if I'm not wrong in saying Heybridge were a team that had a sort of pile up of fixtures due to sort of postponements and things like that. If you're successful in cup competitions and it adds games to your calendar, then obviously it goes without saying that it's gonna be difficult. We were unfortunate. We had a lot of replays. So through the FA Cup, we had a replay in nearly every round, which obviously put pressure on everyone in, you know, the league and the football club. In terms of the rearrangement of fixtures, it's just disappointing when you're at the end of the season, your fate's decided by the fact that you're playing 3 or 4 games a week. I'm not saying there's an answer to it. I don't know what the answer is. That's not my role or my expertise, but it makes it very difficult for a team to try and achieve the ultimate aim of promotion if they're playing 3 or 4 times a week on the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season.
And I think once the successes follow, you know, then that's when the difficulties come, because I think the leagues have worked towards sort of trying the early rounds to not, you know, to leave them open. There's not fixtures in there in maybe the first or second qualifier. I believe for our first tie in the trophy, we've got a blank Saturday in there for our first trophy tie. So the leagues do try and help you in the early stages of the competition, but it's when you're successful and when you progress that you're going to obviously see the fall off from it. But you know, I don't think there's a manager or change room of players that would be in any way despondent about having some pile up at the end of the season if they've had some real progression in the cup competitions. Jody's situation was extreme for me. I mean, the games that they had to play at the end, you know, for different reasons was not a normal season for anyone.
They had a really good FA Trophy run as well, which
exactly.
Obviously compounded the issues for your fixtures. In my own personal view of yourself was that prevented you from actually going up automatically, and then you obviously got beat in the playoffs and whatever. But you surely wouldn't change anything.
It was a great experience the whole season. But when you're always asked to reflect on it, you give an opinion. And my opinion was, we were travelling places like Bury St Edmunds on a Thursday night with 11 players. Well, that wasn't a fair reflection of the quality of our football club. And we lost games like that. Had we gone with 16, 17 players, we most likely wouldn't have lost. So I think in the end, success, I'm not saying it gets punished, but we were good enough to get promoted,
And
and I think
Vixen's your
most
own
people,
success,
most
basically.
people in the league agreed we were good enough to get promoted, but we missed out, and it was largely down to the fixture backlog.
One of the things we do in the Bostik League is that from the fourth qualifying round in the FA Cup and first round proper in the trophy, we will allow a club to have a week free in advance. Now, clubs who take advantage of that, and Heybridge were fortunate to have that last season. But of course, it means that that's another match you're not getting played. And the more successful you are, unfortunately, the more matches that stack up. Mm-hmm. It's not our decision, but the Football Association who say when the season will end. And of course, it's got to end at that stage because of the playoffs. So it's quite difficult. We want to help clubs, but it's a two-edged sword, because if your club's successful, you're going to be one round, that's one match to play, another one. They've got to be played sometime. So I know not all the leagues do what we do, but we think it's the right way.
I think there's more frustration and an agreement in the change room and in the management team when it's due to weather. When you're getting a run of fixtures called off, and it's weather and it's pitches and it's from own experience when we was at Claremont Road, we had one season where we never finished the season because of the amount of games like you had in one season. We was exactly the same. We went into the last game of the season after playing 3 games on a Saturday.
Don't I remember that?
I'm sure you do. And if we didn't, we wouldn't have if the results wouldn't have gone our way on that Saturday, we'd have had to play the game that evening, wouldn't we? It was only that the team that was in a position of maybe be relegated was safe, wasn't they?
And that was because the FA at the time would not let us play beyond that day. We said we'll just go one day more. We'll let them play on the Sunday.
3 fixtures penciled in for the last Saturday of the season.
Yeah. We actually had 4. We still have that in our history. Yeah. 4 matches not played that season.
I think it's one of the things that you could probably say about non-league again, that it's very unique in the fact that you wouldn't get it perhaps in the Premier League, where Liverpool or Manchester City were chasing for the title. They would put weaker teams out in the cup competitions, and of course at non-league level the money is such that you have to put your teams out, because it's almost if you were to get a TV tie, more beneficial to do well in the FA Cup than to get promoted in some respects, and we'll come on to club finances very shortly. One other thing to mention about the FA Cup is the 75-25 split that we were talking about before the show, and it's something that is you're looking to introduce.
Well, it was introduced this season in the extra preliminary and the preliminary round, so that the teams in those rounds got the same as they do in the FA Vars competition, so that the winners got 75% of the money available and the losers got 25%. So that went in just for those first 2 rounds, and the response from that has been tremendous. The feedback, wonderful. So as the leagues, we're looking to put that. We would like that to go forward up to the 4th qualifying round. So we're going to put that to the FA Cup committee as a rule change, and hope they'll accept that. We also want to bring it in, and we've got more control over that, into the FA Trophy. So, bring that into the rounds of the trophy, and I think that will be very popular as well.
And it's almost as if it brings us on very nicely to the financial side of running a non-league club, and certainly that will be one of the things that would be very beneficial to all the clubs that compete. Our second topic tonight is to talk about the finances, and it comes with the news that Thamesmead Town will go into liquidation this week. I know, Nick, that you helped them to postpone a couple of fixtures in the hope that they could find a way out of their situation. How much do you know about the situation, and how difficult has it been for them?
Well, I've been involved in it, so obviously quite closely with the chairman, Paul Bowden-Brown, and I went to their last 2 home fixtures and spoke with them. It's been very difficult for them. It's been very difficult for Paul himself, because he went in at a difficult time to the club, took them away from Bayliss Avenue because of the rent demands that were being made at Bayliss Avenue by the trust. Took them to Dartford to a ground share there, and of course there's not been the support from the community. He was famously quoted as saying he's got £11 profit from his last 2 fixtures. Well, that was in one of those was the so-called local derby with VCD, They didn't even get a 3-figure crowd for that. So, you first of all have to take the emotion out of it and say, well, do the community want a club there? You then have to look at it and say, right, what else can they do? And unfortunately, to get where he was, he had to make commitments. And, a contract with Dartford did not come cheap. He's got contract players and, good manager, but they were still at the bottom of the table. So it's very, very difficult, I think. And we've tried to look at club governance, club finances. We've brought in licensing in the last few years. So clubs do have to do the financial reporting initiative we brought in, 5-6 years ago. The clubs have to do a report twice a year. And we try and follow that up, and we try and identify potential problems. But we hadn't seen this with Thamesmead. It's very difficult without doing a minute control of each club. It's really difficult to spot.
When we talk about Thamesmead and we're looking at the support side of it and the fact that supporters haven't come out, and that's probably one of the main reasons why they're in difficulties, could it be a contributing factor that clubs perhaps find themselves at the wrong level and maybe are victims of their own success? And if Thamesmead were in a few divisions lower, then the costs and the outgoings and the players wouldn't be as high, and they would be able to survive with their fan base? Or is that far too a simple explanation for it?
I'm not too sure that's the reason for Thamesmead. I can see your point, and maybe further up the leagues, you may have a situation where that is true, and I'll probably just bring Braintree Town, I suppose, into the mix. They got promoted last year. I think they finished 7th or 8th, I think it was, in the Conference South, and then went up fantastically, dramatically against Hampton, I think it was, in the playoffs, and they find themselves in the National Conference. They haven't got the money that most clubs in that league have got, and I don't know whether or not they're near the bottom of the league and they're doing as well as they possibly can, I think, for the finances they've got. But the fact of the matter is, they need to be at a level where they're comfortable at and where they can afford to play. Is answer to your question. The Thamesmead situation, you've got to bear in mind that they're not playing at their home ground. It's not their home. They're playing at Dartford Football Club, and they were renting that facility to play their games. And whether or not the fans of Thamesmead were willing to travel the distance to Dartford and play there without it being their own home ground may have had some contributing factor, I think.
But in fairness, they didn't they didn't support it in huge numbers when they played at Bayliss Avenue.
I was just going to say, what was their support base when they was at Bayliss Avenue?
It was virtually the same.
That's what I was just going to say. I can't see that being in the business proposal to move across and being reliant on their fan base.
Well, there's got to be some reason. They got a bigger wage this year. You said, Nick, they had contracted players.
Tommy, and I know he's had a lot of injuries this year, and he said that he's had some real difficulty with injuries. But I find it hard to believe how a ground share at Dartford could work out to be more cost effective than the rent that obviously they were being charged at Bayliss Avenue. I don't know the full facts, but I've been on the other side of ground share agreements for 6 years when we moved out of Claremont Road, and it was the biggest single cost that we used to have under the playing budget, and it took a big chunk of finances to find that, and we only survived because of the band of supporters that took the club forward, and a couple of benefactors within them supporters that helped. But we had 6 years of Harrow Borough and Wembley at the Vow that to come through the other side of it as we have, and with a new stadium and new facilities to work from, that took an awful lot of work financially as well. So,
but Jim, you mentioned Braintree. If you look at Braintree, they're one of the weakest support in Step 1. So there is some direct comparison to.
Sure.
Yeah, totally agree, and that's what I'm saying about if you finding your level. That's what I'm saying. Were Braintree over promoted? Possibly. Regardless of their fantastic results last year and the magnificent achievement that that happened last year. perhaps they're at a level which is, in relation to the question, maybe too high for what they should be.
But how does that? So somebody listening to the debate would ask, how does that happen? To if you go up to a level where you're not going to be able to compete, you're at too high a level. How do you then get into financial problems? Even if you haven't got the fans coming through the gate, surely you sit there and say, well, we cannot afford to compete at this level with players, so we are probably going to get relegated. But we'll just take that. We've had a great journey. Is it a case of trying too hard to compete and bringing in players on wages that you perhaps can't afford because you think you want to compete? And is that where the trouble comes from?
I think that's the danger. And you know, as all of you around the table know, you sign a big player on a big wage, he gets injured. Wow, that's a real kicker.
I think that's the majority of teams that go into any division that they're not familiar with, and I'm talking about familiar with the financial, you know, demands of that division. You tend to spend more than you can afford. Yeah, that goes from the very top of our, you know, to the Premiership. You can go right up to the Premiership where, you know, lesser teams go in, they can't really afford to compete, and they end up coming straight back down. It does happen. It's football, isn't it? I mean, we all want successes, we all want promotion. You asked Bradley and Braintree if, you know, how they felt after they'd got through that playoff finals. I think it's, you know, one of the highest moments of most of their careers, you know. So it's the implications that come after it for sure, which is a challenge for every club. How do you overcome it? What do you do? Sort of, you know, curb your sort of targets and goals at the start of the season to not wanting to be successful. It doesn't work like that, football, does it? You have to for the sake of your own self motivation. But want to achieve.
Do they not have, do owners of the clubs not have a responsibility? And we'll talk about perhaps some of the owners at football clubs now that are spending the money across non-league. Do they not have a responsibility, those running the clubs, to actually say, well, we've got into this division, and although it's very good to have that motivation, and you know, as a manager and players, you want to be able to compete, but if you can't afford to bring in those players, and if that is going to put your club in danger, and you look at the likes of Wimbledon and Portsmouth and Leeds and bigger clubs.
I'd love you to ask that question of our chairman last year. I mean, we was a playoff penalty shootout away from going into the Conference South. I'm sure he would have been mightily concerned sitting up in the stand, you know, of promotion. I really do believe that. Of course, as I just said to you, the change room and the management team want success, but he'd have had concerns, because there's not a chance in hell that Hendon Football Club could have competed in the Conference South financially.
And let's remember that one of the great things that I will always remember with Hendon is when they were given the chance to go up to Step 2, and it was created,
It was
they
before
turned
my
it
time,
down. They said, no, we can't afford it. We will stay where we are. So, you know, it goes to what you were saying, Jim. You know, knowing their levels.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we've moved on, and the pyramid does expect clubs, if they get into a promotion position, to take it.
Well, I flip what I've just said though, because if we'd have gone up through that penalty shootout, would I have, you know, been in any shape or form not wanting to be where we'd earned the right to be? Not a chance. You know, you'd have been wanting to still compete and still do the best you possibly can, even with a budget that you know is not worthy of maybe the division underneath, let alone the Conference South. It's what we're all, you know, what drives us all. But you know, the fall off from it can be quite, you know, brutal really, when you look at the situation that Thamesmead find itself in.
Jody, do you think enough is done? Perhaps we talked about this on the very first debate, where we said the league versus the FA, and the support perhaps that comes down from the FA as the ultimate governing body. Is there enough support at all levels for owners and people running football clubs to manage situations where you find yourself, like Hendon could have done, getting promoted, and actually trying to manage the finances and balance that desire for success against, you know, not risking the club's future? Is there enough support for that?
It's hard for me to say, because I'm not an owner or a chairman, so I don't really know the level of support. What I do know is I think the relationship between the chairman or the owner and the manager is the most important thing, because if that's a good relationship and both parties are realistic, you shouldn't get into financial difficulties. You know, like taking Braintree as an example, Brad Quinton got promoted and then got sacked 15 games into the season. Everyone knew that they were probably the outsiders to get promoted in the first place, probably the most stretched resource-wise. So it was quite surprising that he then got sacked. So perhaps there was an unrealistic expectation, and that's when you can get into financial difficulties, because the manager feels under pressure, so he overspends, he forces it or pressurises a chairman to give him more money to spend on this player, and you get in your financial difficulties. I think if the chairman's realistic and he says, if we can just consolidate, if we stay up by a point, that's success, and the manager's happy to work in that environment, then you won't get in financial difficulties. But as Gary said, managers want to be successful, so they often pressurise owners to put more money in, and chairmen aren't always balanced in their decision making, because they don't really understand it. Not all, every chairman, but in a lot of cases they don't understand the correlation between resources and expectation.
Frank, with your situation last year, we've talked a little bit on this show about the support and perhaps what you went through at the club. Is that the reverse, where you're perhaps not getting from the club what you want and to make it successful?
It's a difficult question to answer, Ben, to be completely honest, because I think that whilst Jody makes a good point about relationships between chairman and manager, and how it has to be a transparent and honest one, ultimately at the end of the day the chairman runs a football club, and if he is the sole provider financially for that football club, then he is sort of by rights, you know, permitted and allowed to sort of make those financial decisions, whether they're cutbacks or increases in the wage structure. I think that other managers that may or may not have been in a similar situation to myself, I know Gary's alluded to something similar when he was at Hendon. There is an element of frustration as a manager when you want to improve the budget, or you feel like the team has rewarded itself by, you know, improved finances. But undoubtedly for us, last season when we got promoted, we just weren't financially capable. We just weren't set up for life in Step 3 football. And it was very, very difficult. Whether or not the chairman should or shouldn't have sort of tried to back the club a little bit more is only a question that he can answer. It's difficult for me to sort of say.
Is that actually an example then of somebody who was financially quite savvy and decided that we're not going to put the money in, and although it was difficult in your situation because you ended up getting relegated, but they'd made that decision as a club that we can't really afford to compete, so they were happy to then go back down a step?
I don't think they were happy. I think that what I mentioned a few weeks ago on the show, which was to my own detriment really, was my own expectation or my own ambition, maybe getting a little bit too carried away with it, being a young manager and sort of, you know, quenching your thirst for success. You know, you've been promoted and you want to then challenge yourself at the next level of football, and thinking that, you know, realistically or unrealistically, you might have a chance. But in the end, ultimately, you know, it just proved to be a little bit too challenging over the course of a season. But I think the club's expectations, in truth, for that specific football club, I just don't think that we ever had that proper conversation and sort of enough meetings about what we all felt mutually was going to be the right direction for the club. I just don't think it was planned and prepared well enough. And I think that we all had a role to play in that, unfortunately. But yeah,
Jim, I was just going to say, actually, Jim, were you have you experienced this on the financial side of it? You're obviously vastly experienced in management. Have you ever had to have those awkward conversations with chairman that perhaps you haven't got what you wanted, or you felt that the club could be going in a different direction?
Every year, every single year with the chairman, you'd sit down with Mr. Flanders, who was, you know, I respect greatly. But to be fair to him, even this year, and I'm quite a bit to say that due to the extra travelling that's involved getting moved over to the Southern League, he cut Gav's budget again because of the fact that he had to spend about another 8 or 9 trips on a coach. So, you know, it's a case of, as we've all alluded to, we all wanted more money because we all wanted to be successful. And again, it's having that, you know, that communication avenue open with the chairman. and a two-way relationship and explain what you want.
Very hard to go into a season at any level as a manager to think just about consolidation and just staying up. None of us work like that. We don't go out on the training pitch and get ourselves up for games and that with that mindset. We all want to achieve for the highest. How
can you track players if
you don't have that
them,
mindset?
yeah.
How do you motivate a change room on a Saturday afternoon if you're not sharing with them your desires to be successful? And it may not mirror your financial strengths. It may well not, but we'll always keep demanding, and like Jim said, we'll always ask for that bit more from football clubs, because that's just human nature. You want to better your squad. But I think going back to the little point you've just made, we're maybe as non-league football sort of runs, especially with the highest, we're talking about the national. I mean, this is maybe more likely a conversation that we're, as a non-league sort of environment, maybe 10, 12 years behind the Premiership. Where did the balloon payment come from? For exactly the same implications of what you're talking about, with the same concerns and worries non-league wise. There was no balloon payment initially, was there, in the Premiership? It was introduced because clubs were going up from the Championship, not being able to afford the Premiership, spending more than they can afford, creating a financial instability that they needed the balloon payment with a relegation just to stabilise themselves. So it's I'm sure it's a conversation that will need to be had a little bit further down the line with the national, because that's going that way, isn't it? It's a full-time league now. It's not non-league anymore, is it?
But the clubs coming down from League 2 get a parachute payment going into the national league.
Well, there you go. So why isn't there the same gains for a national team like we just said to a Braintree?
Yeah.
Why is there not something in place that sees them go up, be able to spend a little more than what their budget allows them to know that they've got a balloon payment if they come up short?
We're about to talk about a couple of those clubs in the National League as we talk about teams that have got rich owners and are spending the money in non-league. And one of the things that may be interested to talk about is the idea, you say that you have motivation and you want to do well. There have been examples across history of teams that perhaps haven't had the money and have still been very, very successful. Is it all about the finances? Is it all about the money, or can you take a team as a manager and say, actually, I can coach and I can try and compete with whatever's happening? And Leicester City would be the biggest, most high-profile example of that in recent years in the Premier League.
Yeah, well, it's what you gauge success by. If you haven't got a budget that, we all know what kind of budget you need to compete at the top end of the respective divisions. If you haven't got that budget, then you have to gauge your success another way. When I first went back in at Haybridge, they gave me one budget, and then 3 weeks later they slashed it by about 65% and said, we understand if you want to walk away because we've gone back on our word. And I said no, as long as we're realistic about what we're going to achieve. And then success is gauged by perhaps a cup run or perhaps player development, and seeing boys move on from your team is another means of gauging your success. Like I said at previous shows, not every team is going to win the league. So if you haven't got any other motivation other than promotion, you are going to fall short. And that's why you see these seasons where you get to like January, February, and some teams just give up. Cut their budget and just give up because they've decided, well, we can't achieve anything. I disagree with that. I still think there's plenty to be achieved, even if you're not a side that's competing for promotion.
And I think the introduction of the playoffs, however many years ago that was, you're right. I mean, it used to be a case of, the top team went up and then that was it, and everyone would cut their budget, and then the remaining 8, 9, 10 games would just be played out. But with the introduction of the playoffs meant that teams that were below middle with 8, 9 games to go were still striving to make that playoff. And that's been a massive plus for non-league football.
I think going on the question, we can all allude to being fantastic coaches, fantastic organisers, fantastic motivators. We all, I'm sure we've all got qualities that, we wouldn't be in management if we wasn't, blessed with them qualities in some capacity. But the bottom line is that finances allows you to pick the best players, exactly in every league. Not just the best players, because it's not only about the players; it's the best people, and it makes your job as a coach, as a manager, or as that bit easier. I don't for one second think. I mean, I've been on the other side of the fence for an awful long time, where I've had to really graft. And when I say really graft, I'm talking about your homework away from just your Thursday night and your Saturdays, going to watch games, going to watch players, taking notes from different scouts, different people about players to go and have a look at. And I've always taken great pride in identifying a player that's required, but it's they're gambles, and not every player do you get right. But when you've got the finances and you've got the money, like you've just said, you're taking less gambles, you're taking less chances, so your success rate on the players you sign is going to be a lot higher. And I think it's a big factor. The more financially stronger you are, the easier your job is, and that's fact. And if any managers want to argue otherwise that are working with big budgets, I think they're telling a white lie or two.
I just want to go back to a point that Jim made, and we've talked about this on the show before as well. The playoffs and the introduction of the playoffs. We've seen an introduction in the National League and the South and the North of effectively a quarter-final playoff. It gives more clubs opportunity.
Yeah.
It seems like a very good week to bring this up, actually. Is that something that we would like to see happen in for example, the Isthmian League?
This year? No. They haven't. I think it's a fantastic idea because it keeps the season and your league campaign open for longer. I think you can get to a fall off where teams, like we've just said, sort of right, like Jody just said, write the season off. They get to a point. I think if there's an added couple of places available to you for the playoffs, I think it's a fantastic idea.
Let's put it. I was just going to put it another way. Is there any reason against it?
Yeah, I think obviously, like I said a minute ago, it does help to keep seasons alive. But at the same time, if you finish second on 95 points and a team finishes 8th on 66 points and they beat you on penalties to go through, you're going to be disappointed.
But do you not know that when you start the season, you know that if you don't finish first and you finish, you obviously get advantages to finish second is that you wouldn't have to play the quarter-final playoff. You get the home ties. You know that on the outset of competition, don't you?
Yeah, it's not about whether you know it or not. It's just about... You said, is there any negatives? And there is. The negative is you could be 25 points ahead of the team that beat you, which means you had a much, much better season than they did, but they beat you in a one-off game. That's what the playoffs is. But if we're looking for balance, that is the negative element of it.
Is there any reason in particular that it wouldn't be introduced lower than the National League level? Nick, you seem like a good person to ask.
Well, I think one of the problems we have to think about is actually fixing the dates, and the fact that the club that gets the exemption is faced with at least 2 weeks of wages without a game. Now that has negatives itself because there's no other clubs to play because everybody else has stopped playing. So if we look at the reality of it, that club that's got exemption, it's got no matches to play, it's got no income coming in, but it's got 2 weeks' wages. So certainly from step 3 and 4, we would not want to introduce it. When I've spoken with our sister leagues, we would not see any benefit of going down an extra 2 places. I also think that there is the point. Well, we talk about Braintree finishing 7th, going up on the playoffs, and not competing at the next level. So are we going too far down that feeder league? I think we've got right, and what step 2 wants to do is great, and what step 1 want to do, fine. But certainly at 3 and 4 is what I do know about, and I think that our clubs are served with what we have, the going down to 5th place. From step 4, you're going down to 5th out of 20 clubs. That's not bad going. It's a quarter of the clubs.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're 7th or 8th, it's basically mid-table. You're basically finishing mid-table and getting promoted. I think you're rewarding the wrong people. It does make the season more competitive, but you're rewarding the wrong people. And as Nick said, perhaps that's a bit of insight into why Braintree aren't financially ready to compete at that level, because actually they were only 7th best in the National South anyway.
but they were at the National the year before, so I sort of disagree with that to a factor. You know, I mean, I agree exactly what you're both saying. 7th being rewarded, you know, but 7th played 4th in the Conference South playoff final this year. You know, I think momentum and you know, and when you have that bit of form, it can come at any stage of the season. If it comes at the end of the season, then that's, you know, a big benefit to you. But I think the positives outweigh the negatives for me in terms of keeping the season occupied. I think there's nothing worse than a season just fizzling out with no, with no competitive edge really, just simply because there's nothing to play for. I'm more for keeping it, you know, open, because I believe, I mean, Braintree got into 7th place. I think down to about 13th or 14th place could have got into them playoffs up until 3 games to go, I believe, or 12th place in the Conference South. I understand what everyone's saying about that's maybe going down a bit too far, but there's some strong teams that find themselves underachieving in the middle of the table. What's
your opinion on it, Frank? I mean, Fulham might have been in the Premier League a bit sooner if the playoffs would have gone down further in the Championship.
Yeah. Enough said.
We'll give the final vote to Jim. What would your opinion be on it?
I agree with Nick, actually. At the level the Bostik leagues at, I think the current setup is more than adequate. Last year's final was just some occasion, and I know you're sitting opposite me, Gary, probably not for your good self, but you know, that was 2,500 people there probably. It just summed the season up, I think.
And I agree. I agree with everyone that's saying, because but when you look at the Conference South, and I've seen it just in a very, very short space of time, from 22nd up to 1st, it's a much more tighter league.
Two wins and you're in the playoffs.
I mean, I think at the moment we sit 7th in the table. 17th is 3 points behind us. You know, it's a real competitive league, and it's when I say competitive, most of the teams are of a level that is maybe slightly stronger than the bottom half of the Bostik compared to the top half of the Bostik. So I get exactly what's being said on that front as well.
I'm sure the debate will continue amongst non-league football fans. One of the things we did actually go off course slightly, and one of the things we were going to talk about was the teams that have been putting the money in. We're talking about football finances in non-league, and the likes of Billericay last year in the Isthmian League. Salford City seem to be heading for the Football League for sure, and Coggeshall Town in the Bostik North division have started to apparently spend a bit of money as well. Is there any these clubs seem to pop up every now and again? Is there any danger that they are maybe putting an imbalance into the league, because then other clubs will try and compete, and actually the level of money that's needed in, let's take for example the Bostik North, suddenly changes overnight when a club has a big financial backing, and then other clubs will try and compete with that?
Without actually discussing actual clubs, it clearly distorts the market, because if a club in your division offers a player that you're paying maybe £100 a week, and they offer him £500 a week, you've got a distorted market. This player now thinks he's worth £500 a week. No one else can pay it to him. Some managers will maybe stretch themselves to try and keep the player, but in the end, certain kinds of players will go where the money is, which is their right to do. And then if that particular owner of that club, because it's always one owner, it's never based on crowds and PR and marketing, it's based on one owner. If that owner disappears, and that club's left with an unmanageable wage bill, and it's happened many, many times.
More often than not, isn't it? You know. So.
But the big impact it has on the game as a whole is what it does, as I say, to the market. So then maybe, I don't know the Thamesmead scenario, but maybe they were competing for players that other clubs were offering 2-3 times what they were offering them. So they stretch themselves a little bit further, and then they tie them to contracts because they know they've got this big fish round the corner that's nicking everyone's players. So they tie them to a contract that they maybe couldn't afford either. And before you know it, you're under huge financial pressure. And you know, some of the clubs you mentioned there, it's clear as day. I mean, Coggeshall Town have had 3 or 4 promotions in 3 or 4 years, and it's not built on. They haven't got Jose Mourinho coaching them. It's a guy who it's his first ever job in football, and he's the owner stroke manager. So it's built on recruitment, which is fair enough. But is it sustainable?
When we look at there are examples of other sports where there's a wage cap in place that stops this kind of thing particularly happening? Is that unrealistic to think that might work in football or in non-league football?
Well, I think it's unfair. I mean, if the club, for instance, I'm going to say Billericay Town. Nick spoke about it earlier on. Billericay Town bought a tremendous amount of good publicity for the league last season with their cup run, with the way that they publicise themselves on Twitter, etc., in national press, etc. So to then put a wage cap at this level, one, it's unrealistic, and two, secondly, it's unfair, because the Billericay Town model is one that club, you've only got to go over to the ground to see how good the improvements over there that Glenn has brought to that club. Now, whether you like or loathe Glenn, he has put a massive investment in Billericay Town Football Club. And if he was just to walk away, as we discussed a little while ago, yes, someone will find it very, very difficult to carry on paying the same wages. But the legacy is there. Their crowds have gone up, I think, fourfold at least. They've been promoted, but the ground itself is at a level which I think anyone around this table would be proud to say they're involved in.
So as a manager, for example, last season, the fact that they were in the Isthmian leagues and perhaps distorting the market a little bit, is it something you just accept and say?
Yeah, but I mean, so from my point of view, it put more of a challenge on me as an opposing manager. We drew with them in the league. We should have won the League Cup final, the Velocity Trophy final, 3-1 up with 2 minutes to go. And so just because they're getting paid more money, the players, it's down to you as an opposing manager to up your game and get more out of your players.
I was trying not to bring that up, Jim.
Well, yeah.
Just to be clear on what I was saying, I'm not being critical of these clubs for doing it. I'm just pointing out the risks. And like Jim says, it is a nice challenge to go up against the clubs that are bringing players down 2 or 3 divisions. It is a great challenge for managers, so it does improve the league. But there is obviously a risk attached to it for that club.
I mean, they're full of quality. It's self-motivating for your change room. The team talks pretty easy when you come up against them, and that's for all managers. I know obviously some will come up short just because of the quality they've got in there, but it does distort the market. But it's a market on its own. Yeah. There was no one else in our division. It was Billericay wages, and it was all of us. It's I
think that's absolutely right. I mean, going around the clubs, most of the chairmen said we're not going to even try and compete. Let them get promoted, and we'll have a more level playing field next season. Well, I think that's where that's where most chairmen go.
We benefited from one of their signings that they made, that they paid an absolute fortune to. We got one of the players we actually sold to them back on a quarter of his wages. Sprague. We sold him to Billericay. He was, once Konchesky and 1 or 2 others had come through the door, he was surplus. We took him back, and we were paying Billericay a quarter of his wages, which was half of what he was on with us before we sold him. So we benefited from the...
we benefited as well. We had Jack Giddins, the goalkeeper, on loan, and we only had to pay a third of his wages. So there are benefits of having these big fish around.
Of course.
From a governance point of view, in a league, does it make absolutely no difference whatsoever if you get the likes of Billericay or a Salford City in the division to not having them in there?
I think what it does is there's a negative from the other clubs. The other clubs don't like it, because they can't compete or won't compete. Therefore, as you go around, the boardrooms are all about, what's happening with them this week? What's happening here? So there's a negative air that is created by it. And what you want positivity. You want, as we were saying earlier, Gary, that you want the club being able to say, can I get to that last playoff point? Can I do this? Can I do that? You want the positiveness, and you don't get it. So from the governance, one of the things that I tried to look at last year was, well, can we somehow put in regulations, rules to ensure that there is sustainability? Unfortunately, I don't think there is. We looked at it, we thought, well, what can we do to say, all right, well, if the owner that's putting all this money in, if he is unable to continue tomorrow, what can we do about it? And there's nothing you can do. Unfortunately, they sign contracts, they do this, and the club is left holding those contracts, and it's a shame. But I don't think there's anything we can do as a league from a governance point of view. I don't think a salary cap works. To be honest, I may be a bit cynical, but clubs, if they want to, will find a way around anything. You know, anything you bring in like that, you know, Jim, I'm sure knows exactly what I'm saying.
Well,
you know.
I think what you've just said is such a valid point. What he's done, Glenn, at Billericay is slightly more than just pump money into players, and that's the bottom line. He's not just improved the football club playing squad, he's done it on all fronts. And we can all be negative and have a whinge and whine about it. They're normally only in your division for one season. They've normally gone through the divisions. I mean, I'm experiencing it now with others moaning about what Billericay are paying and, you know, and taking their better players and such like. But they're more likely to be out of our division next year.
Last year it was everyone's biggest game, wasn't it? So
it was, exactly.
I don't think many managers would be negative because you wanted to play in that game. We drew them in the League Cup and we were delighted to draw them in the League Cup. It was almost as big as some of our FA Cup games. So.
But you also see, I mean, Coggeshall are doing the same. They're improving their ground, so there is a legacy.
Yeah, exactly.
If the bubble does burst, there is
Something's
a legacy
left
there.
behind.
Yeah,
exactly.
You know, in the last few years, we had Peacehaven. Peacehaven came up from the what was then the Sussex County League, came right up to Premier Division, up to Step 3. Unfortunately, things didn't go well. The chairman died, that sort of thing. The finances went, and they've gone back down to Step 5. But the greatest thing we've got here is the pyramid. There's a guarantee promotion if you win, and there's a cushion if you lose, so you can find your own level and come back up. And you know, if we've achieved anything in the last 20 or 30 years, we've achieved that you're not reliant on the old boy vote. You're not reliant on somebody saying, "Will you re-elect me?" No. If you finish in a relegation position, you go. And if you finish in a promotion position, you go up.
I mean, playing and managing, I don't think many of us enjoyed going to Billericay over my time. I haven't. It was one of the grounds, the games.
You mean?
Previously.
Oh, right.
Previously, you'd think, you know, it wasn't one of them nice places to go. It was in deep Essex and such.
There's nothing wrong with deep Essex.
Oh, yeah, there is. You're right. But as a football,
there is in midwinter in
exactly.
Billericay.
You look at the pitch, the changing facilities. I mean, everything is of a level that's beyond most in the division
it's
now.
An exciting
yeah, exactly.
Is.
Totally is.
Yeah, I think clubs now look forward to going there.
Totally.
Because he's also done the pitch.
Yeah,
so, you know, whereas clubs used to be saying, "Oh, January, I don't want to be at Billericay away in January."
Yeah, exactly.
Now they're saying, "Right, doesn't matter when we go. It's something we look forward to."
Yeah, totally.
And definitely massive benefits, as you say, to chairman that are improving pitches, and that's certainly not going to happen through, well, at the moment, the sale of Wembley, and that's a whole debate for another day. So we decided that we're not going to introduce playoffs below Step 2, and also that we quite enjoy having rich owners around because it certainly motivates others to play against them and brings a lot to the league. That's all we've got time for tonight. Don't forget you can get involved in the debate throughout the week on official BOTN. My thanks to all of our guests and pundits this evening. We'll join you again soon.